Hello and welcome to Functional Friday. Joining me today is, I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly based off of how you articulated it yesterday, is Ryan Sandheinrich. Sandheinrich. No, I pronounced it incorrectly, didn't I?
Close.
Sandheinrich.
Sandheinrich, that's right.
I remembered the rich part. Okay, with First Step Family Wellness, and I really was looking for a practitioner, a functional medicine doctor who could talk specifically about women's health, PMS, fertility, and then another topic that continues coming up is IC, interstitial cysts. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, interstitial cystitis. So itis just meaning inflammation. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But there has been something really personal that I shared on my personal page today. And I think it's perfect timing that we're here talking with you and the topic of PMS and hormones. And so let's just kind of dive into some of these pieces. Depression's a huge component. I know from my own personal experience, depression played a major role in my early 20s, right after I had children. My daughter was 9 weeks premature. She was 2 pounds, 9 ounces. She was in the hospital for 7 weeks after she was born. I moved into a new house, started a whole new job, and my depression hit postpartum a year later. And hormones, I know, played a major role in it. So PMS and functional medicine, how do those work together?
Well, a lot of women think that PMS is a normal thing. And so I actually had to write a paper to hand out to my patients because I had so many younger women in their early 20s, late teens, early 30s, where they thought PMS was normal, like having certain symptomatology like cramping, bloating, nausea, missing periods, long periods, short periods. You know, the list kind of goes on and on. The hormonal imbalance as well. So I actually wrote a paper called "Common does not equal normal," because just because you're in a room with 20 other women and you guys all deal with the same type of symptoms does not make those symptoms normal. And so I actually had to kind of come up with a way. I shouldn't say I came up with a way, but I use what other doctors have done before me to kind of help battle PMS symptoms. And I really do it with food and digestion. And it's a simple process, but it does do a lot of things with complex problems. So
I think there's a lot.
I have actually a couple of sheets for, go ahead.
No, I think that there are a lot of people that, I think we're living in a society where we're looking for the quick and easy fixes. And oftentimes that's coming from a prescription that's being written out. And when you're talking about food being a protocol, that's not a quick fix.
No, it's a lifestyle. I mean, you have to make the change, and then you have to give the body time to react to that change. And then on top of that, you have to be enough with yourself to be able to notice those changes with your symptoms. Because if some people don't notice things as symptoms because they've dealt with it their whole life, sometimes it's hard for them to realize that they're actually getting better. That can be a hard thing too.
Yeah. I know from my own, so birth control never really worked for me. I don't know why. I tried it. And I honestly, I say this and some people might roll their eyes. I think it was a God thing. I don't think I was ever medications have never really worked in my system very well at all. I have almost a counter reaction oftentimes. Birth control was never really an option for me. But I had severe menstrual cramps. And I remember a lot of my friends in high school, as soon as they started their periods and started heavy menstrual cramps, one of the first things their doctors did was put them on birth control. So why is that the answer, or why is it not the answer?
I would say the reason it's the answer from the medical route is because it's very simple. Anything that goes wrong with a younger woman, they typically will get the pill. Because it throws off the hormones and it kind of covers up the underlying problem, okay? Because the moment you remove the pill, then those things they come rushing. Those same symptoms, which means you haven't fixed the problem. But I think it's the easy answer, and it's really the solution as of right for covering a lot of symptoms, because the pill can cover everything from having, like I said, bloating, gagging, acne. I've seen a lot of acne. They get tossed on the pill. If they have headaches, they're getting tossed on the pill. And the other drug that has been very common with dealing with women with PMS, and I think this kind of hits home with you, I've seen anxiety and depression medicine thrown at women for PMS symptoms, and I just don't think it's right. Because to me, you're telling somebody it's in their head instead of a physiological problem. And that's just that one. I'm not saying that, all depression is only from PMS and it can all easily be fixed. But I'm saying from that perspective, I think that giving that pill for PMS symptoms, to me, is kind of a slap in the face that it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Because I think we can.
And you did mention it. I mean, it is a personal one for me because I was diagnosed with bipolar because it was 1 week out of every single month. I was so depressed. I was in bed the entire week. I could not hardly function. It was it was thanks to grandparents that helped with my kids. I literally was, I was literally almost bedridden, and I wound up on antidepressants. The antidepressants caused me to gain, I think it was 20 pounds in 1 month. Nothing was working for me. And they kept switching them and then wanted to put me back on the one that made me gain 20 pounds. And that was when I threw my hands up in the air and I'm like, this is not working. And I started seeking outside help, and I started a calendar. I started ticking on the calendar on a scale of 1 to 10 how I felt every single day. And that's when I identified, no, there's a pattern to this. There's a pattern going on, and it's happening right before my period. And then I'm all better. Then I'm like in the high immediately afterward. So I told my doctor, I said, I don't want to go this route. I want to look at a natural route. And within 1 week, I had a letter saying she was no longer going to work with me. Mind you, I'm still somebody who's depressed and suffering. And now the only support that I felt I had is now saying, no, I'm not going to work with you any longer.
Yeah, that could be very tough. And I did like your quote, you have to find your tribe. You've got to find people, because when you think about how we were built as humans, we were built to have like villages and everybody kind of helping everybody. And even though there are more people now, I feel like more people are singled out. You're in your own bubble, even in a world full of people. And so I like having things like Facebook to find people that have similar issues, and you guys can share the issues, because sharing the issues can remove a lot of emotional stress. So when we talk about symptomatology, almost all of that comes from types of stress. You've got physical stress, chemical stress. We're going to kind of talk about that, like food, digestion, things you eat, things you drink, things that you need to do naturally as a human from a chemical standpoint, and emotional. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is there is no different chemical process for any one of those. So if you have a physical stress or you have an emotional stress, the body will react about the same. And that's why the symptoms are typically the same. If you are very physically fatigued, you're very tired, you want to sleep. Same thing if you're very emotionally fatigued. If you've gone through something extremely emotional or something that's been emotional over a long period of time, guess what your symptoms are? You're tired, you're fatigued, and you want to sleep.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people need to know that, and we're just going to kind of run through some of the stuff that you can do to kind of help you. And like I said earlier, it's not like everything I'm going to talk about is going to fix everything for you, but it's something to consider. And I think once people realize how important certain foods are to the body and what it does, you have that in the back of your head that every time you eat and every time you drink, now you're starting to be conscious about why you're going to eat and why you're going to drink. And that's a big deal.
So somebody's watching this. If somebody's watching this right now and they're suffering from depression, suffering from PMS, and I think it even heads into the infertility and then the IC, where does somebody start? Where do these women start to take changes in the positive direction, so that either one, they can come off of medications, or two, just make their life more functionable.
Yeah. So when we talk about stress, like I said earlier, and we're going to focus on the chemical stress, we want to kind of decrease that stress as much as possible. So the things you're going to want to focus on, especially for women, is going to be proteins and fats. Okay. They have a lot of jobs to perform in the human body. Carbohydrates really only have one, and that's for energy. And that's it. So when it comes to like the hierarchy of what you need to eat, fats and proteins are going to be at the top of the list. So I know Dr. Emily Hecker, shout out to her, doing the ketogenic stuff. That's a big thing now, but that's a heavier fats and protein diet. And that's what will really decrease that amount of stress in the body. And the reason is, like I said earlier, the proteins and fats have more jobs to do. So I actually have a sheet, and I know you probably can't read it, but if anybody's interested in this little guy right here, this kind of just talks about the jobs that each one has to do in the body. So let me just give you an example, and this kind of talks about the importance and power of food. So when you have protein, okay, protein gets broken down into what are called amino acids. So if you think about these amino acids like Legos, because there's a bunch of different Legos, and you can kind of stack them and do whatever you want with them. When you take several different types of amino acids and you kind of put them together and combine with other things, you can form things like dopamine, serotonin, insulin. And so when you start looking at things like depression, the most common drug you get for depression is what's called an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Okay? That's just fancy words for we're going to leave this hormone in the brain longer. Okay? The other issue is, what if you don't produce enough serotonin? Right?
Right.
So that's where protein could come in. So you need to get the right amount of protein, which for women at your age is right around that 40 to 50 grams. And then you have to digest it, and then you have to absorb it. And then you have the job of actually producing serotonin. So we have to make sure all of that stuff works. And so what I use in my office is not only the diet, but I also love using, don't mind that falling down.
That's a bloopers. I love it when bloopers.
But I love using enzyme therapy because it helps the body with digestion. And I think one of the misconceptions is we assume that if we stick something in the body is going to do something. The body doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, let's talk about digestion particularly, because I used to do a demonstration. This was years ago. I used to do a demonstration of the typical American diet where I had two pantyhose. I'm probably going to do it at some point here on a video. I took two pantyhose, and one pantyhose I put through what the typical American diet was: coffee and donuts for breakfast in the morning, running through McDonald's drive-through at lunchtime, and then a pasta, chicken, something like that in the evening. And to see that pantyhose get completely bound up and tight and everything's leaking out of it. And then taking a natural approach to it and doing, a smoothie for breakfast in the morning, a healthy salad with lots of leafy greens and raw vegetables, and then a protein and more vegetables at night. And all of that food goes completely through that pantyhose. So it's a great demonstration of what our gut is now storing in it, which I think is what you're saying, is to get the serotonins into the brain to function correctly. That gut needs to be clear and clean, correct?
It does. So if you actually look at how the intestines are formed, you'll see like a lot of ridges. All right. And if you look at the radiator on your car, it's designed very similar. And the whole point is what we like to think of surface area. It needs a lot of surface area to make contact so you can absorb a lot. And you can get something called leaky gut syndrome, where those tight junctions and all of those nice little ridges, they all become very flat. So you lose a lot of surface area for that absorption. And so that's where we come back to what's causing that leaky gut, what's irritating your bowels. And a lot of it is things that come with preservatives, with dyes, things that come out of a box, and let's be honest, things that come out of the middle of a grocery store. Anything that's kind of standing on a shelf in the middle, you don't want it.
So now is your time to give a little bit of a symbol plug. Why do you
Exactly.
and your family, why do you and your family come into Symbol all the time?
Well, one of the main reasons is you guys are one of the few restaurants that does like that farm to table kind of thing. You're not only giving us good food, but you're actually supporting local farmers at the same time, which I absolutely adore. But the bowl that you guys serve mixes everything perfectly. You have your serving of vegetables, whatever vegetables you want. You have your protein, you have your fat with it, and your carbohydrates are not as in you're getting, which comes with fiber and all the other good stuff.
Yeah, we do get some people that say that our bowls are so huge, and the reality is that they're really pretty balanced when it comes to it's about a pound of food, 4 ounces of cooked protein, and the rest is pretty much vegetables with a low density carb, unless you choose the udon noodles. And we use udon noodles to be we want everybody to be able to eat here. And an udon noodle is a very welcoming food for that meat and potatoes kind of a dad who doesn't really care to eat vegan or doesn't really care to only eat vegetables. So we taking that approach to where they can taste the flavors, they can experience the food, and they can enjoy everything in here. So let's talk about infertility, because I think what you have mentioned before is that the gut plays a role in the infertility component as well.
Yeah, so just like I talked about the protein, we can kind of switch over to fats, because dealing with fats is a huge thing with fertility, especially with females. So we're going to go back to like that building blocks idea, like the Lego. So you need to consume trying to think of exactly how many fats, but you probably need to consume more fats than you're getting now. You know, things like olive oil, avocados, things like that, nuts, seeds. But when you break them down, you form what are called fatty acids. So you've got amino acids for the protein, you've got fatty acids for the fats. Now, think about the Legos again. If you start to stack those up with those fatty acids, you can build things like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, a lot of your sex hormones, even your cholesterol. Your cholesterol is kind of a precursor for all that stuff. But now you start to think, oh man, estrogen, progesterone, that's like the main hormones when it comes to pregnancy, getting pregnant, and holding the pregnancy. And so that is where we start with women that have fertility issues. Now, once again, if you have a serious medical condition, I am not suggesting that fats are going to get you pregnant out of left field. But when you've gone through the ringer and you've tried for over a year and they've done their ultrasounds, they've done their testing, and they can't really find anything, this is the route I would go, because a majority of the time this works. And I've got at least 4 to 5 patients within the last 5 years that have gotten pregnant from it. They were told they would never, ever get pregnant again. The only way they could do it would be IVF, and we actually got them to have a child, hold the child all the way to the very end, and the child was very healthy. So the biggest thing is I'm not trying to actually treat something. What I'm trying to look for is, what does the body want, and either give the body what it wants, or what is interfering with the body and trying to remove that interference.
And how are you determining what somebody's body needs and wants? What are those steps?
Sure. So the biggest thing we use is a combination. So I use the symptomatology that you have as a patient. Some symptoms kind of point you towards, I don't have enough protein, I don't have enough fats, and I can kind of talk about that a little bit later. The other thing is palpation, just actually pressing, gently pressing, not just shoving. But there are certain parts, like if your stomach doesn't work well, guess what? When you press on it, it's going to be sore. And that kind of lets us know where in the GI tract you might be struggling. And the other thing that we can do to get a little bit more specific is a 24-hour urinalysis catch. And the reason you do that is you look at what the body's trying to get rid of and what is it holding on to, whether it's good or bad, to see which syndromes they might be dealing with. You know, like, are their kidneys working right? Is their gallbladder working right? Do they have protein in the urine? Do they have lipids in the urine? You know, all sorts of things like that. So it can kind of point you to which organ systems might be struggling. And then we help those organ systems, and then the body gets back to normal. So it's a simple way of dealing with very complex problems. And that's how I like it. Okay. I deal with mostly carbs, fats, and proteins.
And let's touch on IC. I want to touch on IC because this came through, a customer of ours came through. She was talking about her daughter who was suffering from it, and I had never heard of it. And as soon as I posted something on Facebook, what is this? Who knows anything about it? I started getting messages from people that I'm very close to who were saying, I suffer from this. I have this. And I think with all of these things that we're putting into this pile, whether it's PMS, infertility, IC, these are women specifically affected issues. And they're quiet. They're quiet about them. They're not talking about them. So, and especially this IC topic, because it can become very embarrassing. It can cause lots of issues and discomfort when it comes to sexual partners, when it comes to just functioning throughout the day. So what is IC? And I guess my biggest question is, somebody might be suffering from this and has never been diagnosed it and doesn't know how. They're thinking that this is a disease, I'm having it forever, and I will never feel healthy or whole ever again.
Yeah, so IC is called interstitial cystitis, like we talked about earlier. It's actually very difficult to diagnose. One of the ways they diagnose it is they check for everything else, and when everything else looks good and you have pain under the belly button, that's a pretty good, that's what they're going to give you. And if you kind of Google search and look around, they'll tell you that there's no cure. But if you look at what causes IC, it's typically an inflammation of the lining of the bladder. So how I would look at it is, okay, what can cause inflammation in the bladder? And so individuals that drink too much coffee, too much tea, especially sodas, things that are fluid that can really irritate the kidneys, the ureters, and the bladder is one place to start. The other place is right back to food. So the inner lining of the bladder is actually formed of lipids, of fats. So right back, you're back to foods. Do you get enough fats? Do you digest them? And can you absorb them so the body can actually form that layer of mucus on the bladder? And one of the things they talk about with the symptomatology of IC is kind of like that burning sensation. And one of the things that they are thinking causes that burning sensation is that lining. That lining's too thin or it's not there at all. And your urine is typically a acidic pH, and that's touching the actual bladder. And that can cause that burning sensation. So that's really where I would start if I had symptoms of IC. And it's a really tricky thing to diagnose, and it's very tricky to treat, but it is possible.
So where, just mention where you're at and how somebody can reach out to you if they feel like you're a fit or your practice is a fit. Just explain your practice a little bit, because it's not just you. You have an entire team of people that work with you.
I have like a small army now. It's kind of crazy. And guess what? They're all women. So I actually work with my wife, Dr. Jeannie Sandheinrich, and we just hired on another doctor, Dr. Jana Flora. They specialize in like pregnancy, pediatrics. We really work on fertility, and my specialty is a lot of diet, nutrition, and also dealing with chronic issues. So let's say you've seen 4 or 5 other doctors. Nobody's got a really good answer. They've run a bunch of blood tests, and they say you're good. That's my wheelhouse. I do very well with that, with those patients. And that comes back to, like I said earlier, comparing the symptoms to the urinalysis to what is your body telling me is wrong. And it works fantastic. We're located in downtown Kirkwood. We're catty corner to the Magic House. We're actually going to move in a month because we just bought a building. So things are going great. Things are getting bigger.
Where are you moving to?
We will be right off of Big Bend Road in 270. So there's a little commercial park, and it's going to be great. We're doing the build out right now, and just going to be able to offer more to our patients and just move forward. And it's really exciting. And the fun part about this is if you asked me in school what I wanted to do more than anything like about chiropractic, it surely was not PMS, fertility, and women's issues. But here I am.
Yeah, I don't think if you would have asked us when we opened up our restaurant, would we be talking to doctors about food as medicine or looking at AIP, autoimmune protocol, diets. That was not our vision. I think as entrepreneurs, and those that are wanting to serve and help others, we go where we're called, and the passion and all of that starts showing up, and then we just serve. So I think there's a lot of magic to be said about all of that.
It is, and it's a lot of fun, and that's actually what got me into this. I had a patient a while back, and I was doing the basic adjusting and all that stuff, and then she mentioned that she was dealing with anxiety and depression. Now, it was not very severe, but she kind of like your story, that once a month kind of thing. So I started looking into what could possibly be going on, and I came to the enzymes and all that stuff, and I helped her. And when I got to actually see her come in the office, and she was like more full of life and excited about like the day instead of dreading the day, it's like, how do you not want to treat all of those people?
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of got the passion for it.
Yeah, I don't know. My background actually was 15 years of life coaching. And once I got through the depression, I wound up going into life coaching. I studied massage therapy because I was working with a naturopath and was certified in colon hydrotherapy, and felt I needed to get licensed in something, which was then the direction of massage therapy. Did not like that. And I wound up going into coaching. I'm like, I can't be quiet. I can't be quiet and work with these people. So I started coaching, and then the restaurant manifested. And between Greg, my partner, who is the chef, he worked for a chiropractor 25 years ago, right out of culinary school, working with blood-based diets. So it's interesting to see how our history guides us and leads us to where it is that we are today and doing the work that it is that we do. So I love being able to be a connector for the community to pull in these resources and help educate the people that are looking or seeking for something else. I think that what is happening is that we're no longer taking this as an answer when a doctor says something, and people can't afford their medications. They can't afford the insurance. And the reality is the holistic approach and food and exercise and taking care of yourself is actually less expensive than anything else out there.
It is. What I was always told, and this comes back from a gentleman who was a business coach. And he said one of the first things is if you find somebody that you feel is living the life or doing what you think you want to do, you got to pick up on what they're doing and try to replicate that, because there's success in what they're doing. And for me, I feel the same thing with diet and food. Like you see people that are in shape and you go, wow, I kind of want to do that. Well, guess what? You got to take what they're doing, which is typically exercise, diet, proper nutrition, all that stuff. You got to take the whole lifestyle. You don't get to pop the pill to get the body that everybody keeps trying to sell you. You got to make it the lifestyle change. And guess what? You can do it. You just reach out to those people. You find your tribe. You get people that motivate you instead of complain about other things. And you just get up and go. And that's what you got to do.
Well, Ryan, I want to thank you for joining us today. This video, if you have questions, please feel free to comment in here, or you can reach directly out to Ryan and his practice. Ryan, I'll have you put all of your contact information in the comments below as well, so that is a resource for people. But all of these videos are then downloaded and archived onto our website, www.mysymbol.com. These are free resources that we offer to the community that connects them with other experts out there. On June 19th at our Chesterfield location, we have Dr. Olivia, who is going to be speaking on why we need more functional medicine doctors out there. St. Louis is home to Logan College, and a lot are thinking that it's saturated with chiropractors. And the reality is yes, there's a lot of chiropractors, but there's not a lot of them doing functional medicine. So why we need more functional medicine doctors out there. And also the 3 questions you should be asking any doctor prior to deciding whether they are the right fit for you. So I'll put the link on there for somebody to purchase tickets to that event, which is June 19th. Every Friday at 10:30, we're bringing on another expert and we're talking about different things. So if you have a topic you want us to tap onto, let us know. Ryan, thank you so much again. I believe I'm going to schedule something with your wife where we can talk about breastfeeding, because that's another personal topic.
Oh yeah.
But we're going to keep this tribe building and the resources there for the community as a whole. So thank you again, Ryan.
It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.